The hearing left me with cognitive dissonance. On the one hand, we heard statements disputing, proactively and authoritatively, allegations of wrongdoing. For example, we heard that, contrary to criticism, behind-the-scenes talk about writing a statement that disproves the research-related hypothesis reflected, quote-unquote, textbook science in action. Because textbook science necessitates developing a hypothesis and then testing it by trying to disprove it. We also heard that, contrary to criticism, there was no connection between the strong market origin position of the proximal origin letter and the author's NIH funding, since funding decisions on a specific grant had been made months before the writing of the letter. And we also heard that, contrary to criticism, the virus's furin cleavage site is, quote-unquote, suboptimal, and therefore a clear result of natural selection. There is power in such claims, because I believe that most people, including many scientists, are not in a position to question them. There is power in such claims because I think that they can create a smokescreen that shapeshifts individuals right in front of our eyes from likely betrayers of science, truth, and the public good to model defenders of science, truth, and the public good. My cognitive dissonance came from what has struck me as unspeakably secretive, simplistically minded, and aggressive behavior by proximal origin authors, their enablers, and their supporters, which does not comport with the behavior you'd expect from scientists conducting textbook science during a devastating human crisis. My cognitive dissonance also came from knowledge about the dependence of researchers on funders and the significant power imbalance between the two, which means that most scientists who need grants flowing their way to maintain their careers would find it risky to go against the stated or implied wishes of their funders, even if their last grant application had been officially approved. And I think that this is especially the case in the context of a global pandemic that has killed millions of innocent people and can threaten reputations and careers, as well as the very survival of a scientific subfield. Lastly, my cognitive dissonance came from hearing authoritative claims, such as, for example, the quote-unquote suboptimal, crap, and out-of-frame nature of SARS-CoV-2's furin cleavage site, which reflected clear judgment calls, but which lacked explanation and transparency, and therefore demanded of listeners like myself to blindly substitute our judgment with the judgment of the witnesses, and to, most importantly, leave those witnesses unquestioned and unaccountable. So when we connect yesterday's hearing to the National Intelligence Report and the Morenz emails, a question that comes up is this: is it possible that when scientists are culpable, or may be culpable, for serious public harm, the scientific community and its powerful network of supporters in the mainstream media and in award, reward, and funding bodies are conditioned to close ranks behind the confirmed or possible wrongdoers? Is it possible that this closing of ranks involves weaponizing scientific authority against the very public on which the harm has been inflicted, and in the process, recast potential wrongdoers into victim, hero, martyrs that, if anything, deserve more financial support rather than less? Therefore, is it possible that the scientific establishment's efforts to self-defend rest on a new layer of assault on society, which is institutionally sanctioned and which confuses, gaslights, hoodwinks, and most importantly, stigmatizes critical thought, and which forces public acquiescence and support? And if all this is possible, as I believe it is, and as I believe it extends beyond the field of virology and the COVID-19 pandemic, what does it tell us about the scientific community's ability to self-police? What does it tell us about the scientific community's ability to promote the public good when such good competes with professional interests? What does it tell us about the expectation articulated by some at yesterday's hearing that we should let scientists continue to do their job rather than interrogate them about their potentially harmful work? And what does it tell us about what we as a society must do to support science that advances humanity without at the same time threatening our health, well-being, and very lives? With this, I would like to introduce our three guests, all of whom have been targeted by members of the scientific establishment for daring to question the proximal origin dogma.